Venezuelan F-16 dives toward a U.S. aircraft carrier, then this happened. Tensions in the Caribbean have once again surged after a dramatic and unexpected encounter between Venezuelan and U.S. military forces. During what should have been a routine patrol, a Venezuelan F-16 fighter jet suddenly dove toward a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier strike group operating in international waters, triggering an immediate high alert response. Amateur footage recorded from one of the escorting U.S. aircraft shows the Venezuelan F-16 descending sharply, almost as if performing an aggressive simulated attack run toward the massive U.S. carrier. The maneuver instantly prompted the deployment of F-18 Super Hornets tasked with defending the carrier group's air perimeter. Military analysts have labeled the maneuver a simulated attack profile, an aggressive tactic often used to test an opponent's reaction time and readiness. But when directed at a U.S. aircraft carrier, this becomes a highly dangerous and provocative act. Within seconds, radio communications among U.S. pilots turned tense. The carrier's radar operators locked onto the F-16, monitoring its speed, altitude, and flight pattern. Any violation of the restricted engagement zone would have triggered rapid defensive action. Sensing he had crossed a dangerous threshold, the Venezuelan pilot abruptly pulled the aircraft upward, veering away from the carrier. A pair of Super Hornets shadowed the F-16 closely, maintaining a controlled yet firm escort distance. This incident is not an isolated event. Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro has repeatedly engaged in aggressive aerial maneuvers near foreign military assets. However, analysts agree that this particular incident is among the boldest and riskiest to date. Intelligence reports suggest the F-16 was part of an elite Venezuelan squadron often assigned long-range patrol missions. This has fueled speculation that the maneuver was not accidental, but rather an intentional probe to study U.S. reaction patterns. Inside the carrier's command center, the alert status briefly rose to Condition 2, meaning all defensive systems, including close-in weapons and medium-range missiles, were placed in immediate ready-to-fire mode. Meanwhile, Venezuelan state media released an entirely different narrative, claiming the F-16 was engaged in routine training and that it was the U.S. carrier group that had disturbed Venezuelan airspace. The Pentagon swiftly rejected this claim. U.S. officials clarified that operations were conducted well within international waters. They condemned the Venezuelan F-16's behavior as unsafe and unprofessional, highlighting the serious risk of unintentional escalation. Independent satellite tracking shared online clearly displays the F-16's flight path diving toward the carrier group before breaking away, further reinforcing the theory that the maneuver was deliberate. Experts believe Venezuela may be attempting to showcase its remaining airpower capability, despite its aging fleet and long-standing issues with maintenance and spare parts. Some analysts argue the maneuver was politically motivated, a show of defiance aimed at bolstering domestic support within Venezuela by portraying strength against the United States. Yet others warn that such maneuvers are extremely dangerous. A minor miscalculation, radar misread, or misunderstanding could easily spark a deadly international incident. Ironically, the F-16 Venezuela used was originally supplied by the United States in the 1980s. Today, that same aircraft is being flown aggressively toward the very nation that built it. The U.S. aircraft carrier involved in the incident carries dozens of fighter jets, anti-submarine helicopters, electronic warfare aircraft, and some of the world's most advanced radar systems, making any unapproved approach immediately detectable. After the Venezuelan jet turned away, the Super Hornets maintained visual contact, escorting it until it safely exited the carrier's defensive perimeter. No weapons were fired, but the atmosphere aboard the carrier remained tense. Even after the F-16 left the area, the ship maintained elevated readiness for several hours. The incident has since drawn attention from the United Nations Security Council. Some nations have urged both sides to exercise restraint and avoid further provocations. Despite international concern, Venezuela continues to conduct intense military exercises near its maritime boundaries, signaling no intention of backing down. The United States has also increased its patrol operations in the region, reaffirming that freedom of navigation in international waters is non-negotiable. Geopolitical observers warn the Caribbean could become the next major hotspot after Eastern Europe and East Asia, as great power competition intensifies. Rumors suggest Venezuela may have upgraded some of its F-16 systems with foreign assistance. While still not on par with US technology, these aircraft remain capable combat platforms. Inside Venezuela, the incident sparked nationalistic excitement. Supporters of the government praised the pilot as a hero who dared confront imperialist forces. However, US pilots viewed the actions as reckless. Flying low and aggressively near an active aircraft carrier puts both the pilot and the ship in significant danger. A slight mistake in timing or a misjudged turn could have resulted in catastrophic consequences, potentially causing loss of life and triggering war. Although the situation ended without physical conflict, analysts call it a critical warning about how quickly tensions can escalate in an unpredictable environment. This incident raises important questions. Was Venezuela deliberately attempting to provoke a reaction? Or was this the independent decision of an overly confident pilot? The Venezuelan government insisted the pilot followed standard training procedures. Yet the international community remains skeptical. Experts warn that similar encounters may continue as long as US naval presence grows in the region and Venezuela maintains its aggressive patrols. This episode adds to a long list of disputes between Washington and Caracas, ranging from economic sanctions and political standoffs to espionage accusations. Military strategists recommend significantly improving communication between the armed forces of both nations to reduce the risk of accidental conflict. Unfortunately, signs of direct dialogue remain non-existent. The level of distrust between the two governments is deeper than ever. With both militaries ramping up activity in the region, even a small misstep could ignite a crisis. The world now watches closely to see whether diplomacy or confrontation will prevail. The Venezuelan F-16's dive toward a US aircraft carrier stands as a reminder of how fragile global stability has become. One aggressive maneuver, one misinterpreted signal, or one mistake in judgment could reshape history. The question now is simple: how long before another incident pushes tensions past the breaking point? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more global military updates and deep analysis. In the hours following the incident, US naval intelligence worked tirelessly to piece together every detail of the Venezuelan F-16's flight pattern. They reviewed radar data, infrared tracking, and audio communications to determine whether the maneuver had been pre-planned. Analysts noted that the pilot executed a dive angle consistent with combat approaches used in hostile scenarios. This raised further suspicion that the maneuver served as a probing operation rather than an innocent training flight. The US Navy emphasized that even a small deviation in altitude could have forced them to activate lethal defensive systems. The pressure inside the carrier's Combat Information Center remained intense as officers discussed the possible motivations behind the event. As news spread globally, military experts from various countries joined the discussion, dissecting the implications of the maneuver. Some viewed it as a deliberate test by Venezuela's leadership to gauge Washington's tolerance in the region. Others argued it might reflect internal instability within Venezuela's Air Force, where aggressive pilots sometimes act independently to showcase their skill. Regardless of the motive, the event sparked debate about the rules of engagement in contested waters. Several analysts warned that if such incidents continue unchecked, misjudgments could escalate into direct confrontation. The world's focus temporarily shifted toward the Caribbean, a region often overshadowed by larger global conflicts. Inside Venezuela, the political narrative surrounding the pilot grew quickly. State-run media portrayed the maneuver as a calculated show of strength against US military presence. Commentators insisted the F-16 pilot demonstrated courage and discipline, elevating him to near-celebrity status. Meanwhile, opposition groups accused the government of exploiting the event to distract from economic difficulties. They argued that provoking a superpower was reckless and endangered national security. This internal debate highlighted the domestic complexities behind Venezuela's foreign policy. Still, for many Venezuelans, the incident served as a symbol of defiance in a time of national uncertainty. At the Pentagon, defense officials convened a high-level briefing to assess possible long-term responses. Options ranged from increased surveillance flights to more frequent carrier deployments in the region. Some strategists proposed establishing a dedicated exclusion zone around naval assets to prevent future close encounters. Others urged caution, emphasizing the need to avoid escalating tensions further. The incident forced Washington to reconsider its posture toward Venezuela's air activities. However, any response had to balance firmness with restraint, ensuring stability in a region already burdened by political volatility. International organizations soon weighed in, urging both nations to open communication channels. Senior diplomats from Europe and Latin America warned that the absence of military-to-military dialogue increased the risk of accidental conflict. Several nations called for transparency measures, including shared flight notifications and standardized intercept protocols. Such agreements have helped prevent misunderstandings in other hotspots around the world. Yet despite external pressure, neither Washington nor Caracas appeared willing to soften their stance. The stalemate underscored how deeply entrenched the geopolitical divide had become. Behind closed doors, U.S. intelligence agencies evaluated whether foreign nations might have influenced Venezuela's actions. Reports suggested that certain strategic partners had provided limited technical assistance to upgrade aging Venezuelan aircraft. If true, such support could embolden Caracas to take more aggressive actions in the future. U.S. analysts also examined whether the maneuver aligned with broader regional strategic shifts. The possibility that external powers were using Venezuela as a proxy added another layer of complexity to the already tense situation. These concerns prompted Washington to strengthen regional alliances and expand joint exercises with neighboring countries. As the world processed the event, one undeniable truth emerged: the encounter between the Venezuelan F-16 and the U.S. aircraft carrier marked a turning point in regional military dynamics. It exposed the fragile balance of power in the Caribbean and demonstrated how quickly tensions can rise from a single risky maneuver. Whether the pilot acted on orders or personal bravado remains a matter of speculation. But the consequences of that dive will echo for years, shaping diplomatic relations, military readiness, and global perceptions of both nations. The skies above the Caribbean are now watched more closely than ever, and the world waits to see what unfolds next.